To illustrate how to load the prison data from the web into Power BI, I opened up a new instance of the Power BI desktop. And now I go to Get Data, which eventually brings this up. I can go to More, and then eventually I will get an additional list of potential data sources. I choose Other, I choose Web, I choose Connect. That brings up a window that allows me to enter a URL, which I'll do. Can say OK. And then eventually you get a boatload of messages saying that Power BI is trying to connect to the web. This navigator comes up, but this is a long drawn out process. So I actually already did the navigator, and what I got was a number of tables that the Power BI suggests that I select for inclusion in the data model that I'm building. You can look at the different options here. The one that I obviously want is the first one. I can look at it as the web view. This is indeed the table that I want, the table view. And now I'm going to transform that data because I want to reduce the number of columns that I have, and I want to filter on state because I'm only interested in Florida. So I'm going to click Transform Data at the bottom. And that will eventually bring up something that looks like the Power Query editor that we've already looked at in Power Pivot. This will take a while, partly because Power BI is trying to do a number of automatic transformations to make sure that we end up with the correct data types of the various fields in the table that we're loading, and partly because it's a fairly large table. So here we are on our Power Query window. You will recognize most of this. One of the options that is useful that I don't think we had in the Power Query editor in Power Pivot is the use first row as headers. So if you made a mistake and you actually added an additional row on top of your header row, then you can change that here. I'm going to make a number of changes. The first change I want to do is the name that the table has is essentially the title of the web page, and that's too long. So I'm just going to change this to prison data. You see it's processing. Again, it takes a little while for it to achieve this, but eventually it will get there. Here we go. Now what I can do, manage columns, choose columns, and I'm only going to keep the county, the state, the total population, total white population, black, Latino, incarcerated population, white population, black population, Latino population, because all the others I can compute if I want to. And again, it takes a little while, but eventually Power BI will make sure I only get the columns that I want. All right, next thing is I'm only interested in the data for Florida, so I'm going to put a filter on state. And again, this will take a little while, but we will eventually only get the data for Florida. All right, so it has filtered on Florida now. Now, it turns out there is one other change I have to make, because if you click on the, and we rename the column, you'll see that there are some unnecessary characters after each of the column names. So we can remove those, and I'm obviously going to have to do that for all of them. So let me do one more. And the reason we get these characters is that you will recall that when we looked at the Power BI, when we looked at the web page, and I'll bring it up again, you see these kind of characters after each of the fields, and that's essentially what these bogus characters in the field names correspond to. All right, so I will remove them for all of the other fields as well. We don't have to do this now live. The only other thing that we need to be aware of, that once we have this, I can now do close and apply, and that will load the data into my data model. Again, it will take a while. This is not a fast piece of software. But eventually we will get the data in our data model. You see it's making progress because it opened up the fields pane. And now you see we have the fields added. If I go to the data model, I will see all of the Florida data that I wanted.